Oh yeah, I don't think anyone has camera on, but yeah, just to let you guys know, meeting will be recorded. Okay. Okay. Currently screen sharing. Is that popping up for everyone okay?
Yeah.
Okay.
But it's kind
Sweet.
of, yeah.
Blurry.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Hold on. Maybe I can screen share?
Yeah, let's have Sam screen
Yeah,
share.
let's try that.
Wait, let me.
Tyler's like, I can read the title though. Woo! Got him with the title.
Readability, big text. The rest is pixel art. I'm dead.
It's accessibility for me.
Yeah, I'm into art too, but not like this. Not like this.
Okay.
But yeah, that's like also an accessibility thing, like being able to design for low bandwidths. Just like making sure that file sizes aren't too big and shit so that it'll load, which rip that this is a use case of it. But Sam, you're good?
Did you prototype the slides, or like if I were to just click,
Yeah,
will it work?
Yeah. Or I didn't prototype, but you can just click next on them to go to the next frame. It should all be in order. Yeah. And if not, we can just zoom in on each one.
Okay, I got it.
Cool.
All
Who
right.
knew bad Wi-Fi could be educational? Yeah. Yeah, I didn't know either until now. Okay, pixel art or no?
No, this is perfect.
Nice.
I have Verizon.
Okay, flex on the spectrum. Okay, so yeah, this workshop, very formal title, How Shit Looks. It is what it is, and we'll be taking a more product design oriented view onto design and final high level versions of it. Specifically, the term in product design is high fidelity, and just to break it down for you guys, this pretty much means like the final version of a design or before like dev starts to work on it generally. And it's basically how the design for the entire product should end up looking like, or approximate when it is actually developed. And maybe you just like stay in the and don't develop it, like that's cool too. That will be like the final product. Okay, next one, Sam. So first, before going into anything like really specific about Figma or other things, I want to talk about the design system or the concept of it. So not sure if anyone has heard the term before. If you guys are familiar with it, like feel free to say in the chat yes or no. But that's what we'll be talking about. Next one. Okay, so what is a design system? And the simplest definition of this is that a design system is a set of design standards and the UI or user interface components and resulting design patterns, oops, missing a word, made based off of them. So essentially, to break it down, components are smaller parts of your overall product. And the example I have on the right here is a button. And then like the question is, after you have this component made based off of the design standards that you set, then how do you combine this button and fit it into the overall purpose of the website to fulfill what you want to do with that site? Next one. Yeah, so since it might not be super clear to everyone, I wanted to go into what is a component and what is a design pattern. So again, like an example of a component would be a button, but to give you guys like a better sense of it, like I'm looking at my Zoom screen right now, and I currently have like this little view on the right side with like everyone's names, and then yeah, just like some actions there, like view and gallery up at top, and being able to like go down and see more names, more faces, or not faces because everyone's camera is off. If I just click on the down arrow, that would be an example of a component as well, but one with a lot more complexity than a simple button. And a design pattern would be how you take like components, which are essentially the smaller building blocks, combine those components into larger components, as described with the Zoom menu, and fit that all into one product. So I guess that would be like the overall screen. And the pattern for Zoom is, essentially like focusing on the screen share and then having the default pattern, focusing on screen share, and then being able to also view viewers of your Zoom call at the same time. So that would be one example, the side-by-side format we have right now. And hopefully that gives you guys a good idea. Next one. Okay. And to contextualize this even further, so I'm just going to point out some examples of components here. And the first one that I'm going to point out is the search bar up top. And Airbnb's is a bit more unique in that like it splits it up into separate categories, based on the needs of Airbnb's audience. And also the navigational bar right above the search bar itself, which not all websites like have a super clear delineation, but generally navigation will be up at the top, because like that'll be where it's most visible for viewers. And that entire row from the logo, like going at the left, going all the way to the right, that would be the navigation, and that's a component, as well as the button explore nearby stays, and then looking underneath the button, the little, they're not cards necessarily here, but essentially the displays where you have image and then text next to them, those would be considered components as well. Next one. So now that you guys hopefully have a good idea of what components and design patterns are, and if you don't, like, again, feel free to ask in the chat. That's what it's here for, or unmute and ask. I want to go into the structure of a design system. So essentially, you can break down a design system into the what and the how and the why. And I do want to preface that you might not need an entire design system, but it's still important to know about it. Design systems are especially important for really large products like Airbnb. Products are really looking to scale and expand on like a pretty grand scale. But for us, like, we might not necessarily need it, but it's still important to keep the what in mind. So the what, this includes all the design styles and elements. So to just like read off this diagram, the color palettes, typography, grid definitions. So that's like spacing and layout. As if anyone went to Sam's workshop, that's what hers is about. And also icons, which also might not be necessarily used in your product. And then going into a higher level view of the pattern, of the what pattern library. So this includes your components, and then find those.
Oh, Jess, your audio kind of cut out.
And then
Oh no.
The patterns themselves. Finally, the rules, and that's how the why. So hello?
Yeah, your audio cut out for that.
Yeah, I heard that. Hello?
Yeah, we can hear you now, but earlier it was
Okay.
really, like, robotic.
Wow. Okay, I'm gonna add my own F in the chat. Okay, so essentially I'm not sure where I got cut off, but the what, so then your rules, color, type, grid, icons, how to combine them, components, design patterns, and how and why, like why did you do this pattern in the way that you did? And that's always something important when it comes to design, keeping the why in mind. Okay, next one. Okay, so just a high level overview of the design system. And basically, essentially with this, if you guys have been to the past workshops, I'm bringing in all the topics that we've covered in them. some of them like we have not covered as thoroughly. And also, if you didn't go to a past workshop, like that's totally fine. I'm just going to go over everything really quick. So design systems include grids, spacing, layout, typography, color, and also content and iconography. So the first is grids, spacing, and layout. And this is essentially how this factors into components are how they're arranged and built. And an example that I wanted to highlight is the navigation for the Creative Labs website. And you can see with the sort of red columns going down the page. This is an example of a layout grid, and it essentially helps designers better arrange certain components so that it's more pleasing to the eye. And this one does utilize the layout grid, or more like the frame of it. And then, although it doesn't necessarily use the grid for the pages to the right, it makes sure to have even spacing, like even without necessarily lining up with the frame. So that's an example of how this concept factors into the components. And yeah, next one. Okay. So typography is essentially, it's going to be just how the text appears and its purpose, and you're going to want to keep this organized in a hierarchy. And the biggest tip that I have is to keep the number of fonts small and just be sure to change weight and size for variation. You can see with the headers, the main difference is size, but once you sort of like go down this hierarchy, the difference should not just necessarily be size itself. And of course, it'll depend on your needs for your specific product, but just keep that in mind. Okay, color. So this is how color is used throughout the product, on components and not. And the most important thing with this is to keep contrast in mind so that shit is readable. This is an example of Atlassian's colors. They're a particular brand. You can look up their design system guide too. And if you notice all the fails and the passes, that's the contrast. That's dependent on contrast and will determine if things are readable or not. So you want to be careful about this. And two resources you can use with this in mind are color.review, which focuses on text and how they work against certain background colors, and WebAIM, which is more comprehensive. It will also go into what contrast is needed for components. Okay, and content. So this is something that I feel like is overlooked more and also not necessarily present in a lot of design system guides, if like you'll look any up later after this. So examples that I want to highlight is, this is mostly what text appears and the connotation of it, sort of the vibes that it brings. And an example would be like looking back at the Airbnb site again, the use of experiences rather than like just, oh, vacation or like rental place. Like this, it provides like a very different connotation, and that's the sort of sense that Airbnb wants to bring. Like, and that sort of adds into the illustration. Like this is a whole experience that you're paying for. It's not just like a place to stay. And that's what they want to sell. And most important thing to note with design systems, like this is essentially you setting rules for yourself. And once you know the rules, you can break them. But please do so carefully and with much consideration on why you're breaking it. So again, like design, always got to think about the why. Always, always. Okay. And I do have a design system example. I had it loaded up on my Figma, but shoot, I didn't put a link to it on this slide, but because it's already like 5:30, I feel like we should, Sam, what do you think if we just drop this as a resource later on for people to look at, unless like you're able to pull it up pretty soon, just for people to take a quick look at?
Yeah, can you give me the link?
Mm-hmm.
I can share that.
Okay, yeah. Just
Yeah.
give me a second. I need to escape the full view of Zoom. Okay, share. Okay, I'm sending it to you on Messenger. Thank
Okay.
you for bearing with us, y'all. I'm so sorry about the technical difficulties. Okay, just sent it.
Wait, I got it.
Lit.
Okay.
Yeah, so while Sam's pulling that up, again, want to emphasize that this is like,
Okay.
this is for a larger company, a large project. And you're not gonna go as step.
Wait, Jess, your audio again.
So yeah, here you can see, so yeah,
Oh no. Is she still there?
Just dropped out. Wait, do you want to be on my computer?
Wait, what? Aren't you guys roommates?
yeah.
Wait, sorry. Yeah, I was not on mute, but I think she might want to move over to my computer.
Wait,
Hi, Adela.
I'll just try to do online and then, but I'm closer to router now. Hello. Yeah, so
Same apartment.
yeah. Earlier, Brian was like, tell your apartment mates to get off the Wi-Fi and live out. And I was like, no, she's here. But yeah, I'm just much closer to the router now, so hopefully I won't drop out of it. But yeah, so what Sam's showing right now, this is an example of the buttons that Figma uses. And as you can see, like there are a lot of different purposes for and variants for each button. So that's something that I'd say like would probably be important to keep in mind for your own product. There's a couple of different states, and I'm not going to get too much into it because that's not really the purpose of this workshop, but each one sort of serves a different purpose. And if you guys have more questions like later on near the end, like I'm happy to talk about it. But yeah, so essentially giant database of components and how things will appear on any like Figma product. Yeah, and Sam, could you take a quick dip into the Flegos page?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, and this is where sort of the design patterns go. So if you can zoom in on like any one of those pages, Sam. Yeah, awesome, thank you. So you can see how all of those components, like the button, the text, those are combined into like one singular larger component. And then like how those components are sort of also combined. I feel like there's examples to the right, but yeah, so hopefully this gives you guys a good visualization of how things sort of stack together as components to create one entire experience for a product. And yep, that was the quick dip into Figma. And now we're gonna go to the next slide. And okay, so this is gonna kick off the workshop components. So if you guys do have Figma, I hope everyone has Figma. If you don't, that's fine. Like feel free to follow along. And oh my God, Sam, you're literally gonna like do the workshop.
Oh wait, no. You can. Oh wait, are you on your computer or are you on?
I am on my computer, but like the Wi-Fi has not been great, but I'll try. And then like, if not, we'll see what we can do about that.
Okay, because you know how Figma has that like collaboration. I can just like zoom into wherever you are and go from.
Oh, you're a genius.
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, if you guys didn't know, Figma has this really awesome feature where you're able to see what someone else on the same Figma file is working on at the same time. So, okay, Sam, I have Figma loaded up. I think my Wi-Fi is good enough for that. And feel free to hop into the OG Figma. I'm on the workshop page right now.
All right, I just shared the Figma file into the chat.
Oh, yeah.
So then people can.
Yeah, I can do that right now too.
Oh, no, I just put it in there.
Oh, okay. Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay, Jess, just let me know like what frame you're on. Actually, wait, can you share your personal one with me and then
I think, I realized I'm on there right now instead of the community one. Okay. Just give me a quick sec. But hopefully, everyone can kind of view the community one okay. Let us know if there are any issues with that. Okay. Okay, just send it to you over Messenger.
Okay. It works. Okay, I will share screen now.
Okay, sweet. Yes. Wow, you love to see it. Yeah, no pixel art this time, baby. Okay, so first of all, before like we get into actually like sort of making things, I do have one more example of lo-fi, or low fidelity is the full term to high fidelity. And yeah, please don't open this up. It's kind of a mess in that file. But if you just look at this, this is an example of a low fidelity screen. And the purpose of this is to communicate the overall structure and components present on that will be there in your design. And as you can see, the only things that really change, okay, so it seems like a lot changes overall, but essentially it's the application of the design concepts that we went over. Color, more specific typography that matches with this very makeshift mini design system we have going on over here. And yeah, just how things will look on the final product. And low-key gonna plug, feel free to check out this website for yourself at novaforgood.org. It's for another org that I'm in. And Sam also like helped on this design, as well as Christopher Bakhtiar, if anyone knows him. Yeah, it's lit. Okay, so just gonna scoot over here. And right next to this, so I have a little lo-fi example for you guys, but if you want to not work off this, like that's totally fine too. And we'll be making a hi-fi version of this using components in Figma. And one thing that I want to clarify, components in Figma, so hopefully everyone has a good understanding of what a component is, but in the case of Figma, there's a very specific functionality that distinguishes components from, say, a group of objects within Figma. And I do want to make that clear before I go into it more, but you guys will hopefully like be able to see that from my examples. And just to show you guys, there's already a layout grid on both of these. So this will help. I just turned it on mine, but essentially to turn it on, you'll click the name of the frame and then go towards the menu on the right side. And the section that says layout grid, it's not visible on the screen share, unfortunately, but you can turn it on or off if you click on the eye icon. So mine are currently on right now, just to give you guys a good idea of the view, but yeah, feel free to turn it off if you would rather not necessarily look at the red layout grid right now. Okay, so we're just going to start off by teaching you how to just make things simply in Figma. So I'm just going to start off with, let's do these buttons first. So Figma, if anyone has used other design software, it's relatively simple and intuitive. But really quick, if you guys look towards the navigation bar at the top, or sorry, more like toolbar, you'll see like a bunch of different icons. So if you click on the third one, rectangle, or click R on your keyboard, that's the hotkey for rectangle. You'll be able to make a shape. So to make one, you'll just be clicking and dragging. Okay, everyone good? Able to do that? I sure hope so. Let me know if again, if you guys need me to go slower or anything like that. So cool, we have like the background for our button now. And I'm gonna make this one black. We're feeling a little goth today. And okay, besides the button background itself, we're gonna need some text on this. So I'll just click T on the keyboard, that's the shortcut. Or if you go towards the toolbar again, it's gonna be the fifth icon. Just gonna click on that. Whoa, it's pretty big on mine because I was working at a different size earlier. So I'm just gonna switch this to 18. Let's see how that is. Okay, that's a bit small for the size of the button currently, but of course we can adjust that. I'm gonna go with 24 for now. Button text here. Okay, and okay, you guys might see a problem here. Currently the button text is dark and will not be visible on the button, but we have an easy fix for that. So first things first, I wanna make sure that everyone has, if they look towards the left side of the screen, that's where you see all the layers. So like everything on that Figma. And you should have button text above the rectangle. Yeah, I'm not sure how I can show it on mine, but just make sure that you have button text above the rectangle on the left side of your screen. So I'm just gonna drag this in. And because currently button text is above the rectangle, then it'll show up perfectly fine when I do that. Okay, everyone good? All right, so next thing, we're gonna make sure that these guys are aligned. They're looking pretty off. So I'm just gonna select all of them. So I'll just click and drag, or you can click on one of the items, press Shift, and then click on another to make sure that both are selected. Okay, now both are selected, and I'm gonna go towards the right menu. At the very top, you'll see that there are a couple different icons, all with like bars and lines, and okay, like what the heck is this shit? So the only two that I'm gonna use are the second one, align to horizontal centers. Okay, just click that. You guys can see the difference immediately. And then going on to the fifth one, which is, if you hover over it, it'll say align vertical centers. So these tools are for alignment. So how you want the objects to be lined up. And they're very visual. So you should be able to get like, oh, what will this alignment do? Right off the bat, just looking at them. Like, say I want everything to align left. The text is gonna like shift all the way to the left of the button. Boop. Yeah, so that's another example of that. And because you have two items selected, and when you're doing a line, it's only gonna apply that rule to those items, like whatever you have selected. And it's definitely possible to do it for more than two items at a time. Okay, so we've got these two. And before I get into components, I'm just about to, I wanna make sure that everyone can see that there are constraints. So if you're looking to the right side of the menu, like you should see a little constraint section, and left and top should both be illuminated. Okay, thank you, Sam, for pulling that up. And yeah, that's where Sam's mouse is going over right now, that's constraints. And essentially that's where any objects like you have selected will sort of be fixed to in relation to the entire frame, or like a larger object, say for the button, the background fill. And this just means that whenever you adjust the frame size or anything like that, that stuff will just stay there, stay fixed, as Sam is showing right now. But yeah. If you don't have a constraint, one thing that will end up happening is that objects on like whatever Figma frame you're working on start to get a little funky. They'll like stretch around and you'll be like, yo, what is going on? But yeah, that's just constraints. And usually the default of left and top is fine. But if you'd like to look more into it, there are a lot of Figma tutorials on that. Sam right now is doing a couple other ones as an example. Oh, okay, Fontana Yi, how do you change text color? Okay, so just make sure that you have the text selected. A very nice thing that all design software will do is that it'll show what you have selected. Just like click on the text and a blue box, bounding box should appear around it. Okay, that's selected on Sam's screen. Hopefully you were able to do that, Fontana. And then you're gonna go to fill, click on it, and then select whatever color you would like to change it to. And if you would rather not use fill and you already like have the color right there, like on the Figma, you can hit I, which will be is a hotkey for the eyedropper, and then select whatever color you'd like there. I'm just right now I have the button text selected, and I'm just gonna select black. It's gonna disappear. Boom. Let's switch back to white. Okay, just switched it back. And Sam did on hers too. But yeah. Okay, any other questions before we move on and start getting into components? No problem. Okay, since everyone seems to be good, let's move on. Okay, I'm just gonna do a little quick thing. I personally, this is like personal preference, and you can have your buttons look like however they want. Right now it's like rectangle, like 4 corners, all sharp. I like them a little rounded. It's like a little friendlier, which, you know, of course that depends on the context of your design, if you want it to be friendly or not. So I'm just gonna change that real quick. I'm gonna like click on the rectangle, and again, look to the menu on the right. And if you see like above constraints, there's a couple of different like numbers there. There's X, Y, width, height. And then if you see the one on the bottom right-hand corner and hover over it, it'll say corner radius. And that's where you go if you want to make corners more rounded. I'm just gonna do, let's do 10. That'll work pretty well for the one I have at my size. Sam might be using a different number. It will depend on the size of the button. But yeah, feel free to set that to however you want. That was just like personal preference. And so the next thing that I'm gonna do, this is where I'm gonna start getting into components. So I'm gonna select everything, again, like click and drag, or tap on one item, and then while pressing shift, tap on the other item I want selected. And I'm gonna go again to the task, I keep saying taskbar, the toolbar up top, directly above, like towards the 3 icons in the center. And I'm gonna go for the first one, which says create component. Everyone there, it's like 4 diamonds, no fill, only a white stroke. And I'm just gonna click that. And boom, suddenly the blue selection has changed to purple, or it should have changed to purple if you did that correctly. And if you look towards the left where all your layers are, you'll see that this is now called component 1. So I'm gonna just change the name of that really quick so it's clear. And I just changed mine to button. And if you open up the little arrow that's currently pointing to the right, it's like to the left of button in your layers panel. It'll open up and show what exactly is inside button, what is contained there. And you can see that button text is still above rectangle, and both of them are encapsulated within this button component. Yeah, so this is the component in Figma. And the main thing about components in Figma, like, although, you know, the usage is based off of the definition that I told you guys before, the main key thing is that say you make a copy of a component. So that's going to be what's referred to as an instance of it. And to make a copy, you're just going to click, drag while holding Alt, I believe. Okay, I'm on Windows, so it might be, I think it's a different key for Apple users.
Yeah, on Apple, it's
And you,
option drag.
option drag, okay. Yeah, so that would be an example of creating instance, or you can just select the button. Like, okay, if you already made an instance, you can make a copy of that too. Control C and then Control V, or like Command, but it'll appear right on top of it. And like, it'll say paste button for like about 5 seconds. So you know that something's been pasted. So don't worry if like, you're like, oh, where the heck did it go? It's definitely there. Just like move it around if you did Control C and then Control V. So, okay, I've got like a few buttons now. Sam also has a few buttons. So these are instances of the original button component. And the cool thing about components is that I'm going to click back into my original button component, and any change that I make to this one will be reflected in all the other components. So I'm just going to change the size of it real quick just to show you guys. Yeah. Yeah, you can see how the text sort of reshapes itself, and all of the other instances, like the change is reflected across them. And this applies to not just like the shape, like the width and height of the rectangle in the back, but also the colors that you use. So I'm just gonna go into selection colors and make sure that only the rectangle is selected for that one. But you can make sure it's just a rectangle that's selected. Just look towards the left, and rectangle should be highlighted in blue. And you can select whatever color you want.
Question?
Wow, that is my eyes, Sam.
Sorry.
Sam, yeah. Sam just changed hers to really bright yellow at first, which has contrast and accessibility issues, like considering the white text on a yellow background. But yeah, so any change you make like will be reflected. And it's when you're designing, it's really important to make sure, even if you're working at lo-fi at first, that you're using components, because then, as you guys can tell, like it's much easier to make changes and have them instantly reflect across all instances.
Yeah, wait, someone has a question about making components again.
Yes. Could you show us how to make a component again? I missed it. Okay. Sam, do you want to just sort of start from the top with like making a rectangle, and then
Yeah, of course.
or yeah, we're just using a button because it's the easiest example. But there are like a lot of other things that should be made into components as well, like examples I can give off the top of my head, like search bars, nav bars. Okay, so Sam has made a rectangle, rounded the corners, and also added some text. She's selected both of them. And oh, Sam has, okay, yeah, you can group it first. Group is basically when all of them are organized, all those objects that you've selected are organized together. But like changes will not be reflected if you make it like a copy of the group, because it's just a group and not a component. Okay, Sam, componentize. So yeah, you can go up top to the nav bar. There are 3 icons at the center. You're gonna click on the one that's to the left, and it should say create component if you hover over it. And it's like 4 diamonds essentially. And once you click that, the selection around the button should be purple. That's I know it's important to not have everything rely on color necessarily, but yeah, things will be purple. And if you look to the left on your layers panel, then the text will also be labeled in purple, and there will be a components icon, the same icon, the 4 diamonds, this time filled, that indicates that that object is now a component rather than just a group or a collection of objects. Okay, yeah, no problem, Max. Anyone else have a question? Or need us to like go over a certain part again? No worries if you do, and no worries if you don't. Okay, I think everyone's good for now. Yeah, so that one's done. I'm just gonna delete some of my extra buttons. Sam also has a few extra ones floating around. Yeah, okay. Oh, we're back on my screen share. All right, cool. I'm just gonna turn on the layout grid to have a better idea of where to place these buttons. Again, to do that, you'll select, yeah, I think Sam is doing it on hers. Select the frame that you're on, and then to the menu on the right, go to layout grid, and then it should be like eyes closed, and then just hit it, and then the eyes should be open and the layout grid should be visible on your frame now. So again, like Sam went into layout grids with much more detail on hers, but essentially it's how we're gonna keep things organized. Yeah, and I'm just gonna sort of go along the example that I had for the other lo-fi.
Did you have it start on the second column?
Yeah, I wanted it to be tighter. So yeah, like again, you have this frame, but you know how you use it and how you put objects on it is up to you. I just wanted it to be a lot tighter in my example. So that's why I sort of have had things like starting in on the second column rather than the first, but you can place it wherever you want. And I'm gonna start putting in, okay, actually, let's finish all the other components first and then see about the parts that aren't components. So the other component, okay, I'm gonna finish up with buttons first, and then we'll move on to the other type of component currently present on the demo. So just gonna make a copy of the button text. You might not need this for your website, but just in general, if you have two key actions that you'd like a user to do, but the actions aren't necessarily they don't have the same level of importance, then you're gonna wanna make sure that the buttons are distinct from one another. So again, this is also going to serve as a practice for editing your component. And if you edit an instance of a component, the change will not reflect in the original. It's only when you reflect, if you edit anything with the original, that the change will then reflect on any instances. So I'm just going to edit the instance. Oh yeah, as you can see on Sam's, she's changing the opacity of it, I believe. So just like how solid like something is appearing, transparent or not. And yep, so essentially she's just changed up the rectangle in the back to be a different color, and then also the text to make sure that it's now readable on that gray. So feel free to change it to whatever you'd like. I'm gonna follow Sam's example as well. And because of how components work, this is essentially a different type of button. And I want to make sure that I can edit this easier later on. Because like whenever you change up an instance, it's only going to be reflected in that particular one, unless you make more copies of the edited instance. So I'm just going to make it into its own component, so that I can more easily use it later on. So the first thing that I'll do for that is, wait, Sam, did you get to do that already?
Yeah, I made them into.
Okay. Yeah, sorry, I did not see you doing that. So I'm just gonna sort of explain from the top, like again, Sam, if you wouldn't mind like walking through it again on Figma.
Yeah, of course. I'll just like follow your audio.
Yeah, for sure. So currently you'll see that what's titled secondary button right now is an instance of the original button. So what we're gonna do is just essentially detach it. So separate it from that original, and you're gonna right click and then go to detach instance. And once that's done, make that instance, or what was formerly an instance of the first primary button, into its own component. So it's just the same process as earlier. You can go up top, hit create component, or right click and then find create component somewhere in the menu, and then click there to make it a component. And yeah, awesome. We've got our 2 components now. And again, like an easy way to tell if something's a component is if the selection around it is purple rather than blue. Okay, so it's already 5:55, crazy. So I'm just gonna try to go a bit faster on the parts that we have left. So what we have left are or actually maybe we can just do it using the example rather than creating your own. I think everyone knows how to create the text, create like any new text. Again, that's like you can press T for a hotkey and then just click and start typing, or click and drag to create like a specific, you'll see that a square will appear or a rectangle, and then let go and then type from there. And whatever, if you're creating text using this method, then whatever you type is going to just be contained within that particular shape, versus if you just hit T and then just click, and then that won't be constrained. Yeah, sorry, that's just a quick aside. So Sam, I'm just basically going to use what I have in the frame above, like my lo-fi example, and then just show how that can be made into a component as well. So up top, it works. This layout is definitely different from a button, but the concept of the component is going to be the same. So I have home, about, and archive for the navigation. That's like the 3 main areas of this hypothetical page, and also a little rectangle. This is just one UI trick, user interface trick, you can use to show which page that you're on. There's a lot of different ways to go about it. But yeah, that's the one that I have currently. I'm just gonna group all of those. You can group all those first and then make it into a component, or you can just like select all of them and then hit create component. So that's an example of that. And then again, in the future, like to show how edits like will be reflected, I'm just gonna make a quick copy of it and say, okay, I'm creating another page and it's not the home page anymore. So I wanna make sure to change this up. And even though this is a repeating component across multiple pages, like having a navigation, like I want to make sure that it's for, like I'm making, say, the about page, and I want to show that, hey, you're actually, the user is actually on about rather than home. So again, I'm going to go over detaching the instance to create another one. Right click and then click detach instance. Everything should be selected in blue again. And then make it a component once more. And just be sure that it is a separate one. Just check in the little like layer menu to the right, to the left, sorry. And I can now freely change anything in the second one. I'm just gonna move it to about, unbold this one, bold about. And so when I'm making the about page, this is the component that I would use. So again, this is how you can best apply components throughout your work to make it a lot more efficient. I'm just gonna delete that for now. And I'm gonna, okay, it's almost 6, so I'm just gonna move pretty fast into creating a hi-fi version. And again, going from lo-fi to hi-fi. So if it's a lo-fi example, you should see that like the structure of everything is pretty clear, like where your nav bar is, where the text is, the content, like what is on it, and then also like what actions you can take via the buttons and how those are all arranged. So I've arranged things like along the layout grid, if you guys like want to open it up. And if you open it up, like, do notice that I went in a bit tighter than the layout grid actually is, just like for personal preference. So because I want to just move fast, I'm going to make a copy of this entire frame. Just select the name of it and then click and drag. Oopsies. Trackpad is failing me. And while you're holding on to Alt, then let go. But make sure you're still holding on to it. Hopefully everyone was able to copy over their frame okay. Let us know if not. Okay. So I actually did not make this a component yet, so I'm just gonna do that now. Component, and I'm just gonna, yeah, this is not a component either. Yeah, so if you copied over the frame, be sure to make the buttons into components, and I'm gonna name mine properly. I'm naming the darker one primary button. It's like the one that you'll see first, because like it's so eye-catching due to the darker background. And then I'm gonna name the button with just the outline secondary button, just so we're clear on those. Yeah, and we are gonna be keeping the changes pretty minimal. Here where you see the gray square, that's what's just basically a placeholder. So when you're working in lo-fi, usually for images and other content besides a specific text, you can just like literally have it be a gray square, or like just anything really simple to indicate that there is content here, but you know, like you're not done with the final design of it yet, so you're just not going to put it in there, but you want to communicate the overall structure. And so that really basic element will just take its place for now. And we're still keeping it pretty basic. If you see the little blobbo I have up here, I'm just gonna drag that in. And just put it in. I'm gonna make sure that it's, I'm just aligning it according to the layout grid currently. And I'm also going to, this is another example of how you can use alignment, but rather on a singular object and in relation to the frame instead of like two objects selected. So I still have the little blobbo selected. You can see by the selection around it. And I'm gonna go back to my alignment, which again, to the right at the very top, and I'm just gonna click Align Vertical Center. And there's a very minimal adjustment. So I'm just gonna move it to a crazy location and then Align Vertical Centers. That hopefully was much more noticeable. And that's an example of how alignment works when you have one object selected. It's just gonna work in relation to the overall frame. So now I know that this blobbo is like perfectly in the middle, horizontally speaking, of this particular frame, which is very nice to know. And we're gonna keep it super simple for hi-fi because we're kind of running lower on time. So all I'm gonna do is change up the color of this background, and it can be like, you know, anything that you want of the background of the button. I'm just gonna change it to yellow, keeping in with the whole yellow theme, and then change this to black. And I kept this one pretty short and simple to just like, oh, James, I see your question. I will get to it in a second. And I kept it pretty short and simple. But when you're like actually making things completely in hi-fi, it's gonna be like much more fleshed out than this. But yeah, so I guess like another helpful way of thinking about this is that structure, your layout, grid, and other elements should be, no, actually just like layout, structure, and also content, that should be decided and settled once you're like done with your lo-fi. But then when it comes to, I already had the fonts adjusted here, so there's not much change that like we have to make, but feel free to change it if you would like. I sort of just went along with the typography hierarchy that I had over here. But yeah, usually when you're working in lo-fi, the fonts won't always be like the final font that you want. And then but that will have to be reflected in the hi-fi. I'm just gonna rename it. Yeah, and although there's not much change like for this example, if we zoom back to the original example here, you can see where, you know, everything has been fully fleshed out. So although the overall structure remains the same, like for this navbar component and also like the header, copy, and the 2 key actions, like all the other parts that are not clear in the lo-fi are definitely clear in this hi-fi, like the application of color, addition of like one other component that wasn't in the hi-fi, because things can definitely change as you like keep making edits to design and work towards a final one. And how things look when you're on a particular page, what colors are used, what other elements are floating around in the back to add to the whole experience of the website. And that's all sort of coming together, like thanks to the design system and other things that aren't necessarily a part of it, like with these little illustrative bits. But yeah, the combination of everything that we've gone over, grid, spacing, layout, typography, color, content, all of that coming together to create like this final product. And hopefully, like through the use of components, you'll be easily able to make that transition. And that's it for the workshop component. Okay, Sam, could you switch back to the slides? There's just some final things to go over before we can let everyone go. Okay. So again, like a final message, consistency helps make designs beautiful. But again, like also you can break out of this, but just depending on what you want to achieve, and if like breaking out of it will assist in achieving your purpose. But generally for products, you want to keep things consistent. And final slide. Thank you for coming. If you like hover over the links in the file, then there'll be some helpful resources for you guys. The first one is some basic UI tips. And then the second one are more design patterns for mobile and web respectively. Yeah, all of those are like pretty neat resources, although the web one is like kind of edgy sometimes. And they do go pretty hard, and that might not be the level you're working at with Bloom right now, but that's, you know, totally fine. Just get your inspiration from there. And yeah, thank you for coming, everyone, and keeping like and staying despite the crappy Wi-Fi and technical difficulties. Okay. No, thank you. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. If anyone has any,
Thank you so much.
of course, if anyone has any last minute questions, feel free to shoot them in chat. We'll be here for a little bit.
Yeah, I got one question. Will Creative Labs be taking new applicants? I'm an alumni interested in design and development tracks. Yeah, Creative Labs like is always like taking new applicants per quarter. We have like also besides Bloom like the project system. So like just students who have an idea for a project, they'll apply to become a project lead, and then we'll sort of filter through those things and then see which ones end up like becoming promoted projects for the quarter that other students can then hop onto. But as an alumni, like, ooh, Sam, like clarify on this if I'm wrong, but like it's not really open to alumni at this point, right?
Yeah, so at Creative Labs, we really try to focus on like giving opportunities to current students, because we already have a pretty hard time recruiting like underclassmen. So most of our opportunities right now are exclusive only towards like students who are currently attending UCLA. The only reason why Bloom is available to alumni is because we're just teaching the basics and yeah, not necessarily like hard to find a spot. We accepted everyone who is passionate about Bloom, and projects is more like picky, I guess, and requires more work and commitment that we know we can for sure get from like current students. We have opened it up to alumni before, but that's because it was the beginning of lockdown and a lot of alumni really wanted to start their own project, but I'm not sure what our plans are for the winter quarter. So I hope that does answer your question. But you're free to like interact with our Discord and attend other workshops. It's just projects are a little more exclusive. Yeah.
Yeah, and it'll probably be like that for the foreseeable future.
Hey, this is James. Thanks for answering my question. I was curious, are the Bloom tracks like design or projects, or are they something else?